Welcome to Between the Sheets, the non-judgmental podcast where we're going to cover various sexual health and wellness topics. I'm your host, Dr. Stephanie Zwonitzer. I'm a urology and sexual health nurse practitioner, and I love helping my patients and listeners discover and develop their most satisfying sexual experiences. Between the Sheets is here to normalize the conversations about sexual health and cover everything from basic anatomy to the most taboo topics and everything in between. Real talk, real pleasure, one episode at a time. So come on, let's get between the sheets. This episode is sponsored by Boston Scientific and its educational website on erectile dysfunction, edcure.com. One study estimated that more than 50% of men over the age of 40 have some degree of erectile dysfunction, which can be frustrating and confusing. Go to edcure.com to find information on erectile dysfunction and treatment options, including long-term treatment options offered by Boston Scientific. Boston Scientific does not endorse any statements or opinions expressed during this episode. Welcome back to Between the Sheets. We're going to have a fun conversation today here with Michael Reed. I'm very excited about this. I think that it's really great to touch on men's health and kind of that area between therapy and medicine and coaching and all these different things. And Michael brings that all together and really helps men find and live their best lives and kind of adapt to different situations. So welcome, Michael. It's nice to see you.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So tell us a little bit about how you got into this and what you're kind of specializing in.
So right now, yeah, my story is not too far off from other men's stories. It was something that happened within probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago with my most recent relationship that ended. And it was one of those deja vu moments where like things are going great and then they just kind of like slowly falling down gradually as problems starting to arise. And then eventually it kind of blew up. And then you do some recap on what happened. You look back and you're like, oh, it was this, and this. And then had a kind of a dawn on me moment. I'm like, oh, this has happened before. This is not the first time I've had this type of relationship end this way with these particular problems, this particular way. And then looking back at past relationships and realizing like, oh man, there's a pattern here. Holy crap. And then looking around at my friends, my family, my coworkers, like, oh man, they've got the exact same thing too. Holy crap. Start deep diving into psychology, biology, all kind of like, research, reading way too many books. And now getting to a point where it just started to like answer all my past questions, all the things, the mistakes I made in my teenage years, my early 20s, my mid 20s, past relationships, and how all of it kind of like ties in together into the one. It's not exactly a cohesive model just yet, but I think there's a really strong angle to support men who are struggling with intimacy, struggling with relationships, struggling with, sexual health, struggling with all that stuff through more of a scientific lens where possible. So I think a lot of the content I've seen out there tends to be a bit more spiritual in nature. And most guys, at least myself in particular, I don't really respond super well when you tell me, oh, you have to just get in touch with your inner child. I'm like, eh. But you tell me like, oh, okay, here's how your hippocampus and here's how your amygdala works and here's how your brain works. And I'm just like, oh, okay, this actually makes more sense to me. Yeah, cool. Yeah. So trying to help support guys to have a better understanding of things from that more scientific angle where possible.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, because we all learn things and respond to things differently. And I think it's really great. I love the medicine side of things and the biology side of things myself. Obviously, I'm, working in medicine. But so I can definitely see where, for me, those kinds of conversations are really helpful as well. So I'm sure for a lot of guys, they are as well. So
Absolutely.
Where do you kind of find your niche in coaching these guys? Like, where are you finding them and what are you helping them with?
Self-worth, addiction issues, mainly, primarily pornography, video games. That was my own shtick for a long time. Navigating relationships. A lot of it tends to, like my experience, I find a lot of guys who just have not had, they haven't had the experience. They don't understand the information. They don't understand the process by which unpacking these things is. You can't use logic. You can't intellectualize it. You have to experience it. It's a totally different, and trying to explain to the guys that it's just parts of your brain that you don't directly access through rational thinking. You have to go through just like experiencing whatever it may be. And then once they go through the experience, unpacking what happened, why it happened, and then what's the next step from there. Kind of going through, trying to give them like a step-by-step of why is a relationship, why was it amazing in the beginning and now it's falling apart? Why can't I quit porn? Why do I have problems? Where does actually like addictions and whatnot come from? And what am I doing in my day-to-day life that is reinforcing these behavior loops without even realizing it? how
Right.
much I feel like I love this term. It's meta programmable.
Mm,
How like we're creatures that can literally program ourselves.
yeah.
But then if you're not aware of the programming, it's just going to repeat itself, and you're just going to be like, oh, it's my life. It's bad luck. It's this, it's that. Like in my case, finding the same type of woman in different skin, like 5
Hmm.
different times in a row, and then think like, why does this keep happening the exact same way? I'm like, oh, because there's something in my programming that is looking for a specific type of person that matches my wounding that I haven't fixed yet, I haven't addressed yet.
Right.
And until I actually acknowledge it and start working through it, it's just going to keep happening again and again and again and again. And rather than blame the other person, you have to like look in the mirror and say, it might be actually be me.
Yeah, it's amazing once you start to be self-aware of what your own issues are, and then
It's
you're like,
scary at first.
yes, like maybe I am part of the problem.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Humbling for
Yeah,
sure.
it's very eye-opening once you start to peel back some layers, and do you find that the men that you work with are kind of resistant to that, or are they at the point where they're like, "All right, man, help me however we need to get there?"
Combination. It
Yeah.
depends. It's a matter of learning to separate that part of you that is like I guess your ego is the best way to say it.
Mhm.
Learning to acknowledge like it's not necessarily your fault that you are here, but it's your responsibility to try to fix it, address it, and work on it. And to separate what we refer to as like, integration is like learning to separate and then come to terms with the parts of yourself that are doing what they're doing, but they're not malicious. They're not
Mhm.
evil. Like if a guy is dealing with a pornography addiction, it's not something wrong with him. It's literally just like he's got a natural sex drive that's been misconstrued and misdirected. But
Yeah.
that sex drive is totally natural, and it's been there since time immemorial. But looking at yourself and like filling that gap and understanding with shame, oh, something wrong with me. I just can't stop. I can't do this, or just cheating, or have relationship issues, whatever it may be. And it's just programs that are just firing off in the wrong way and in the wrong angles, and learning how to redirect them without attacking yourself in the process.
Yeah.
That shame is a big one. And the shame, and it's crazy the kind of loop that can create where it's like maybe you've got a relationship issue, you've got communication issues in your relationship, which is causing intimacy and sex to dry up, which is causing you to feel like, you're feeling neglected, which tends to push you in the direction of using pornography, which ends up, creating
Mhm.
shame, which creates problems in the relationship. And then it creates this perpetuating
Mhm.
loop that gets
The
bigger and bigger and
cycle.
bigger until it just explodes. And then one day you say, like, oh, it just didn't work out. And it's not necessarily like you're not a bad person. It's just like there's something in there that's causing you're just not either understanding or not addressing that once you address and start working on and creating certain structures and boundaries around, you can start aiming this energy in a productive way rather than letting it control you.
Yeah, and I think, there's this whole movement right now for I'm sure men as well, but I know especially for women that it's like just accept me for who I am. This is who I am. If you don't like it, go find somebody else. And it's like, okay, yes, to some degree, you want someone who accepts you who you are, but you also can do the work on yourself to improve, to be a better partner, to be a better lover, to do all of these things. And it's like, we still need to do that self work. Like, take me as I
Absolutely.
am, but help me grow too.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a maturity problem across
Yeah.
the board. It's not people don't like to hear that, but there is a certain there's a certain element of maturity, especially in certain categories of life. Like what
Mhm.
I've seen a lot is what's always funny is before I got into this work, I did massage therapy. I still do massage therapy on the side for quite a
Mhm.
while, about 10 years now. And I've had no shortage of like private conversations with a lot of different people. You start to
Yeah.
hear a lot of themes repeating after a while of
Hmm.
certain, like people from completely different backgrounds, same themes.
Hmm.
And one of the themes I heard a lot was, married women who were, with their husbands who just didn't have a good sense of emotional vocabulary or didn't have a strong sense
Mhm.
of, just creating emotional steadiness and groundedness and whatnot. And these men would be in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and the women would just be like, how is he this old and he still acts like this? And I think it's this idea of like, oh, once you hit a certain age, you just get a download from the universe.
Right.
Like,
You
oh,
just figure it
software
out.
update. Now I'm mature.
Yes.
Rather than recognizing that for better or for worse, he managed to go his entire life without getting this like training or this demonstration of how to handle emotions, how to deal with bad feeling, how to communicate what you're feeling without exploding.
Mhm.
And you'll see people who are like men who are wildly successful, like crazy financially, and they just cannot hold a conversation with their spouse for the save their life.
Yeah.
It's two completely different forms of confidence, two different
Mhm.
types of things that to have to work on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think confidence that you mentioned is a big thing. So, in my world as a urologist, I have guys come in for me with ED, Peyronie's, different things like that. And I kind of have to pull apart, well, what's the actual issue? Is it
Hmm.
that you physically are not getting the blood flow and keeping the blood flow where you need it to be? Or are you mentally checked out? You guys are
Yep.
having relationship issues. You're not processing things correctly. And when I bring that up to the guys, they're like, "Well, my mind doesn't have anything to do with it." I'm like, "Yeah, it sure does. The head-to-head connection is real strong."
Hmm. Hmm.
So if you have guys that come in and they're kinda disconnected and stuff, especially with sex, like it's dry in their relationship, they're not really sure how to get back on the same page, or they're not getting the pleasure that they used to maybe, how do you kinda help guys work through or start to peel back the layers of that?
Education is usually the
Yeah.
first big one I find with a lot of guys because, like I said, like, oh, that's not me. That's not. I'm not. I don't have those problems. And then you kind of sit down and you start walking through, the science behind it. We have like a lot of neuroscience, a lot of research pointing to certain things now. Um, Getting them to understand, like, here's how the brain works, here's how the body works, to the best ability that we understand so far. It's a pretty darn good model so far of explaining like the brain body connection and how certain things have. Like, one of my favorite things was like research I came across that was talking about how even if you cannot readily identify emotions that you're experiencing, the parts of your brain that are, like, we'll say, holding on to and experiencing the emotions are still getting blood flow. So it's
Mhm,
still in there somewhere. But just because you can't consciously acknowledge that you're feeling it doesn't mean it's not there. And over time, like, becoming emotionally disconnected from yourself can then lead to other compounding problems. And so when we start to like do a little bit of research and whatnot and kind of like educating them on like, this is how the brain works, here's whatnot. And you start to do like a little bit of a background. Like, okay, when did this all start? Oh,
mhm,
we've been married 15 years. We haven't had sex in the last, 5 years. Okay. It probably started like 7 years ago or 8 years
mhm.
ago, something like that.
Yeah.
Started to decrease a little bit. Maybe the kids came along, things got a little bit stressful, or I got a promotion at work and I was way more stressed than I was ever before. Then I started watching porn gradually, and then all of a sudden, like, okay, tell me about that, something about that, and
Mhm,
then things start to escalate. And even in the case of like pornography use, for example, teaching men this idea of like hedonic adaptation and whatnot. It's like pornography, for example, the algorithms are amazingly good at not only showing you what you probably what are looking for, and even AI now is even going to be even worse, but
mhm.
that you get used to it. And then you start
Yep.
escalating intensity. And then when you go to like your everyday average, like, human wife or spouse, it's like, well, you're not 16 women in a room all getting gangbanged at once. Like,
Right,
how can this be fun? This is just not the same
right.
thing. And it takes time to then have to like reset those systems and feelings, and over time, and then gradually start to normalize traditional intimacy again, and
Mhm,
normalize, or even guys who have referred to as like death grip syndrome.
mm,
Yeah, like they have just gone to, like, you literally, it's like, imagine you just like, someone just punch you in the arm 1,000 times a day. After a while, you wouldn't feel anything. Same
right.
exact thing.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
taking it slow and just kind of rewinding, understanding what happened to the body, and like trying to desensitize gradually without, feeling much shame, and finding different things to repurpose that energy to in the meantime. And then just like having like compassion and sympathy for yourself as you go through the process.
Yeah, and I think, for me, a lot of it is when I'm talking to these guys about that, because they come in and tell me these things too. I can get a great erection when I masturbate, but when I'm with my partner, I can't.
Mhm.
And it usually comes back to porn use, or they just really like the way they masturbate. We all know how to get ourselves off the best, and they're really good at it. And they do it often enough that all of a sudden their intimacy with a partner isn't there. And I try really hard to bring the shame out of it. Like, I don't
Mhm.
shame you for having watched porn. I don't shame you for masturbating or anything like that. But maybe we need to cut back a little bit. Maybe we need to scale it back. Like, maybe we need to just take a couple week break. Maybe, and kind of allow them to understand that it is because of these connections that our body makes
Mhm.
where that inlines the problem, not necessarily porn in and of itself. It's the degree to which you watch it and use it and what your body adapts to it.
Mhm. Yeah, and then the big one within there sounds like with the masturbation thing, like communication. It's like,
Hmm.
how you get off, but can you tell somebody else? Can you communicate to
Right.
somebody else and teach them? And do you have the patience to have them figure out, like, 'cause it's gonna be slow and clunky and awkward, and like
Yep.
weirdness when you're back in high school with your first girlfriend or boyfriend. You're like, have no idea what you're doing. No one really taught you and
Right.
figuring things out. But then, yeah, it's that question of can you have that honest conversation with your spouse of like, actually, do you mind if we try this? But also, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
don't get mad at me. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that,
Right.
whatever it might be. And all of a sudden, you start realizing there's connections between your ability to talk to your spouse, very the worst, like, and then it's reflecting how your mother talked to you when you were a kid, your father shamed you for this, and all of a sudden it's just like no, that's and my a big one I see with a lot of guys, a lot of men have a hard time holding on to simultaneous emotions. One emotion to begin with is always a great step in the right direction, but
Yeah.
recognizing like you can love your partner or your parents, whatever, and also be angry at them at the same time. Or
Hmm.
you can be multiple things at the same time. And unless you give space in some capacity to someone or something to let that emotion out, it's just going to keep bouncing around the back of your head and causing interruptions in your ability to focus and have other
Hmm.
conversations and communicate and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I actually had a patient just the other day that we were talking through his erection issues, and he's in his 50s now. So he's needing a little bit more stimulation. He's needing, whatever. And his current girlfriend apparently doesn't give great head. She's just a little less experienced and doesn't do it as, and my conversation with him was, well, is she teachable? Is she a person that you can say, honey, this is what I really like? Or could you go a little faster, a little slow? Like, is she going to take critique okay?
Mhm.
Or is she going to be super offended, like, well, this is how I do it kind of thing? Because I like having partners that where I want to do what's best for them, what they like, and I want that in turn, right? And so for me, I'm just like, well, you should just tell her, and he's like, oh God, like so it's one of those things where yeah, you need to learn the skills to have those conversations, but you also need a partner who's going to be receptive to that
Yep.
because that's a tough situation. It's such an intimate thing, and you don't want it to be like, "Well, hey, could you do it like Jessica did it because I really like." I mean, you can't say that, but so you gotta do it in like a nice way, but you should be able to tell your partner, "Hey, I really like it this way. This is what's gonna help me feel the best."
Yeah, and there's a lot of shame around the idea that guys don't have it figured out. Like
Mhm.
every woman is like, oh, just buy this book and you got to do this one technique and you got to do this one thing, and it's just like, fortunately and unfortunately, everyone's different,
Yeah.
and therein lies opportunity for a bit of novelty and new experiences, but also the potential fear of like having to start over fresh and
Mhm.
learn something new, and it can be a little humbling, especially if you're if you're an established, successful person in a career, and all of a sudden you're starting from square one in something new again, rather than just going back to what you know and what's familiar. And
Right.
it's gonna there's gonna be a couple of clunky times where it's gonna be awkward and weird, and then after a while it's gonna be fucking awesome. But you have to get
Yeah.
over that initial curve of just figuring this person out, or understanding what they like and what they don't like,
Yeah.
and beyond that, also trusting that like they're being honest with you
Mhm.
about what they're actually enjoying.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things that like I talk to my guys about it too, and just having constant open conversations about that and how important it is both sides. But I think for guys it really is, getting that reinforcement from your partner that you're liking what they're doing and being able to tell them what you like and don't like too.
Hmm.
It's just such an important piece of a relationship. Whether it's, just a friends with benefits situationship kind of thing or a long-term relationship. Those conversations need to be there.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it always loops back in some crazy way to men's ability to communicate with women, and so this in the context of heterosexual relationships,
Mhm. Right.
that it's a different style of communication and it hits on different circuitry in your brain. It's like
Mhm.
they've got these guys who can like completely dominate a boardroom, who are just terrified of telling their wife, like, actually, do you mind if you do it this way?
Mm.
And also, and at the same time, a lot of times you can have relationships where this resentment and frustration has been building on behind the scenes among other things that are going on. And then we get to the bedroom, and he's like, "Oh, do you mind if you do it this way?" And she's like, "Well, if you had done this more," or
Right.
he's just got this built up sense, like pent up frustration and fear of how's she going to respond? Is she going to be mad at me? Is she going to do this? What's she going to think? Da, da,
Mhm.
da. And it could be things from the relationship. It could be things from your own past. It could be things from whatever. And it's like taking the time to understand that if you get an internal kickback from your own mind saying like, you know what, don't even bother. It's not even worth it. I just go
Mhm.
watch porn. It's easier. That right there is telling you like there's something there that needs to be addressed. There's something that you should consider talking to someone, looking at and saying like, why is it that every time we get into bed and I get excited and all of a sudden there's this one point hits and then I just lose interest and I go off into the bathroom and just jerk off. Like there's
Yeah.
something like when I'm in proximity to her, when I see this feeling, it reminds me of, I don't know what I'm feeling, but it reminds me of something my nervous system has kind of coded in this moment as like, when this happens, run away. And
Huh.
then you run away, and then she feels like, oh, he doesn't love me. He doesn't think I'm sexy anymore. No, no, I actually do love you. I had a hard time at work today. It's something, all that bullshit.
Yeah.
Then the sex starts to dry up, then the problems start to come about, and then suddenly affairs pop up out of nowhere. And
Mhm.
then it just starts to escalate, and you wonder, like, where's this all coming from? Like, something back here you're not looking at, not addressing. Something in that programming is just not say misfiring, but you programmed it for something else and you haven't rewired it yet.
Yeah. How do you start to work through that to find out what that issue is or was to be able to even start reprogramming it?
A lot of rapport building to start off, because a lot of times men will have defenses that they don't realize they're putting up. And a lot of it is just it's very quick. It's very it's like instantaneous how quickly your brain, your mind can just change a topic, or change, like it can alter a fact or an idea quicker than you realize you're even doing it. And then you'll walk away and go like, why the hell did I say that? What the hell's going on? And I think, for at least for me, I think it's helpful when I start to work with guys and explain to them like, well, this is how your mind works from like almost like a caveman perspective. Like, we're not
Mhm.
that far removed from cave people. We were
Mhm.
literally like out on the plains hunting, wildebeest not too long ago. Like, comparatively,
Right.
for like human evolution, like, it really wasn't that long. I think the
Yeah.
agrarian period, like when we were farmers, is only about 10,000 years old. But humans
Mhm.
have been walking around for like well over 1 million to 2 million years. And so you've got a lot of built-in survival mechanisms that are there
Mhm.
that can do things quicker than you can even acknowledge it even happened. There's even research and studies to point to certain things that we do and don't do under certain conditions, and how it can, like, you can alter the wording or change, like, based on someone's facial language or body
Mhm.
language within like a tenth of a second.
Hmm.
And you won't even realize you did it until afterwards, when you walk away and think of,
Yeah.
like, do like a bit of a review. And so teaching them, like, there are parts of your mind that are designed to keep to keep the status quo with the people around you, that can activate and fire quicker than you can even acknowledge, that can override your rational thinking. And that doesn't mean you're a bad person. It doesn't mean you're something wrong with you. You're not broken. You're literally just firing off really old software that's meant to just make sure. Because if I piss off the tribe, they're going to kick me out and I'm going to die. And right now,
Right.
the tribe is like my wife or my coworkers or my friends or my new girlfriend. I have to, like, make sure I really, like, put on this perfect song and dance and act so she doesn't leave me, because I'm afraid of her
Right.
leaving me, because maybe some trauma that happened when I was a kid. And then starting there, and then they kind of go like, oh, okay, so it's not me. It's just
Mhm.
like this part of my brain that does this thing that's been evolved to do it for millions of years. That's just like misfiring in the modern age,
Right.
and how it takes just, and then from there, asking the question, like, what was your childhood like? What was your family like? What was your relationship with your father like? What was your relationship with your mother like? Past girlfriends? Maybe there's some major instances back in high school when you were humiliated by a girl who embarrassed you,
Oh.
or something that happened, or you had some difficulties at some point, or maybe you were overweight, whatever it may be. And then, like, somewhere in there usually is some connection to a
Hmm.
pattern that started a long time ago, that's still repeating itself under certain conditions today. And acknowledging it, step one, is usually a huge part. And then step two is saying, when that pattern reemerges, you have to try and just take a second, take a breath, sit with it, speak it out loud. We try to
Mhm.
just fit the solution to the person, depending on what needs to be done, whatever's happening. Like the big case, for example, for pornography, very commonly we see guys who have rituals built around
Mm.
them. It's not just
Okay.
like, oh, I just went and jerked off. It's like, no, I was stressed out at work. I had an angry phone call with my spouse. I walk in the door. I smell the smell of the house. Suddenly, I want to go to the bathroom and turn the lights off. And then I'm like, okay, how are we dealing with work stress? How can we improve your communication with your wife? Like, when you get home, can you go for a walk around the block first? Or if you had that feeling,
Mm.
can you just instead just do some push-ups or do some burpees, or start
Okay.
journaling instead? Start asking what's happening around the activity, and start changing bits and pieces of it along the way.
Hmm. That's really interesting. I like that idea. So can we use that then same idea or framework for the guys who, like you said in your story at the beginning, you've had the same relationship multiple times and you're like all of a sudden like, what is the correlation here? Like, what is the definitive factor as to why I keep dating the same type of woman and why we keep ending in the same type of way?
Yeah, absolutely. My case, have you heard of it's not an exact medical term, but nice guy syndrome?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was me. That was 100% me. And I love my father, and I love my family and my friends, but I had a lot of nice guys in my family. And what I realized a pattern for me was I constantly was chasing, and this even ties back to my mother, and I can go into details about that, but a lot of it was just me finding women that in some way was resembling my mother, and me
Mm.
trying to like fix her emotional issues. Because my mother had a lot of emotional, I wouldn't say volatility. She had a like what was sort of like complex PTSD. She had like a lot of repeating patterns of things, like some emotional craziness in the household. And then me later on, when I found women who were like, kind of having some issues and needed some support and what, I'm like, oh, I'm familiar with this. This
Yeah.
actually reminds me of like what I did literally my entire childhood growing up, trying to
Yeah.
calm
It's
down
like
my
your
mom
comfort
when she
zone.
got, yeah. So much so that when you find a woman who's like, I actually am grounded and well rounded and I'm okay with myself, I'm just like, I'm not feeling it. I don't think we're really meant to be. I don't
You're
know what
not
it
broken
is.
enough for me.
You're not broken. I don't have anything to fix. Well, I don't know if this is going to work out. Yeah. And yeah, when you get guys to sit down and say, like, do you see the pattern? You're like, holy shit, I didn't realize like this has been going on for this long. And then
Yeah.
ideally finding either a partner or just doing, depending on what it is, it could be a matter of finding, like going a couple days and finding women who just, they don't need you to fix something.
Hmm.
And then when you're in that presence, you're going to feel a feeling of like, oh, but I don't know if is this going to work out? And just say like, okay, just sit there. Just take a couple deep breaths
Hmm.
and sit there and just try to like ride out that feeling and talk to yourself. Talk to you like, it's okay. You're not bad. It's not a bad situation. She likes you. Da, da, da. Surround
Right.
yourself with other guys who you feel like you can be open and honest with your behaviors. Talking it out loud could be very beneficial. Journaling about it, just identifying your patterns. And yeah, it's
Hmm.
the same thing. It's a matter of just finding those little micro moments to start practicing. How many stories you've heard of guys trying to fix their partner's issues when she's like, she's feeling emotional and like that's the
Right.
last thing she wants, but he's just like, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't understand
Right.
why it doesn't work. And so the practice, just sit there and just let her vent, and
Hmm.
don't try to fix, just ask questions. And then it's going to feel really uncomfortable for him, and then after a while it's just going to become normalized, be easier. It's practice at the end of the day,
Yeah.
but identifying what's happening when it happens. And a lot of times what we have happen to these guys is they'll have like a momentary relapse, and then they'll catch themselves immediately. Like, oh, I'm doing that thing
Hmm.
again. I gotta just take a breath, close my eyes, just talk to myself. Okay. And then they just do it again and again and again and again. Eventually it becomes normal to just not have to fix everything all the time, or to not have to
Right.
feel the urge to solve around, like, and then even for me, I got to a point where I would have like, I started meeting women, and like, I would just somewhere in the conversation be like, oh yeah, and like I grew up in this really really crazy household, this and that, and I'm just like, I'm getting, we're gonna take a few steps back. It might not be the best fit for me right now. I know where this is gonna go if I let it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. I love that reflective piece of it and kind of going backwards. Do you find that sometimes if there is a particular time frame or situation that kind of broke his framework or wired it in a way that's not necessarily the healthiest, that they've actually kind of repressed that memory, and when you kind of talk through it, all of a sudden it's like, oh shit, I didn't even remember that.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think the difference there between is like traditional trauma versus complex trauma. And trauma,
Hmm.
it's like the word, and like every guy hears that and like, oh, it's my trauma. But it really, what
It's
it
become such
is,
a
it's,
fad to have trauma now, isn't it?
yeah, everyone's got trauma now. But reality is that it's not like, I think it's Gabor Mate said this, like, it's not what happened, it's how your body responded to it.
Hmm.
It may have been too much for you to handle, and your brain basically logs it down in like the memory banks of like, the next time anything resembling this happens, start to freak out or do what worked here, dissociate, freak out,
Hmm.
anger, whatever it may be. That's usually like a one-time instance like that. But if it's complex, it might be something like repetitive, something happened consistently over a long period of time. A lot of times we have guys who will talk through a story versus feeling a story.
Okay. That actually makes
And
sense to me.
yes, yes. And that's a big one, because the way I explain it, like with emotions, it's like it's a process. It's like it's emotional digestion is the same thing as like, you eat food, it goes into your mouth, it goes down your esophagus, into your stomach, it gets broken down by enzymes, it gets absorbed in the nutrients, and then you poop it out. And that's the whole sequence. If
Hmm.
at some point in the sequence it gets stopped and you get stuck, you get constipation, for example.
Hmm.
Emotions have a sequence of something crazy happens, your body reacts to it in a way you didn't choose to. It could be anger, could be crying, could be grieving, whatever it is, and then you move through it, and then it gets out of your system and you feel better, and then you can start recalling memories or whatever, and then they're just memories. They're not like
Hmm.
emotionally charged memories anymore. a lot of times there is an emotional charge still attached to a memory that they are either don't realize is still there, but it still pops up under certain conditions,
Okay.
or they just don't feel comfortable like going through that experience. It's like when little kids, the same thing. It's like when a little kid, something scares them. What do? They come running to mom or dad, and they're crying and they're holding on to, and mom and dad ideally stays calm and grounded. And the kid just cries,
Mm-hmm.
and then they calm down. Their nervous system gets rattled. They go into a sympathetic state,
Mm-hmm.
and then they gradually come back down. And it's like, okay, I've processed this. I've
Yeah.
integrated this experience now. I've been through it. It's okay,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be. It's like if a dog scares a little kid, and all of a sudden they
Right.
freak out because they've never seen a dog before in their life. They're very, very young, and then like, oh my god, freaking out, and they calm down. Okay, maybe dogs bark once in a while. That's okay. I can handle that now.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't get through that experience, every time a dog barks, they're just going to go back to freaking out again, the same way they did before,
Yeah.
because they haven't fully digested it yet. So
Sure.
working with guys to say, we'll talk to guys, and they'll talking about how, oh, this, yeah, my dad may have, beat me a lot when I was a kid, and, he yelled at me, and it happens, it's okay, it's whatever. I'm just like, well, okay, well, pause there for a second. Tell me that a little bit slower.
Yeah.
And just like walk me through what happened exactly. And like, yeah, my dad beat me. Stop. It's like, how did you feel about that? Like, well, crying tears and everything like that,
Yeah.
whatever it may be. And you
Yeah.
didn't realize, like, okay, when that happened 20, 30 years ago, whatever it was, like, you didn't finish the sequence.
Mm-hmm.
And now this is popping up somewhere when your boss yells at you or your wife yells at you or something like that. And it's still happening again and again because you haven't finished that you haven't finished digesting. You're almost like emotionally constipated.
Yeah.
And if enough of this starts to, backlog, and emotions, absolutely, this is what guys don't grasp very well, is like emotions can backlog,
Mm-hmm.
like whatever it may be. And suddenly you've just got like, they'll refer to as feeling like emotionally numb. Like, I just don't feel anything. It's like, no, you're
Mm-hmm.
literally like, you say like, you're full, you're topped
Yeah.
off. You've got no more room. Your brain only has so much space for so many things. And if you max it out, something new is going to come along. You're just not even going to feel it because you still haven't worked through all this stuff yet. So until you actually like empty out the hard drive space of what needs to be processed, you have no more room for new stuff, and you start to walk through life almost like an emotional zombie. You don't even feel anything. You don't really notice anything. And the big one for that, I think, is we got a lot of guys who they like time starts to feel like it goes like quicker and quicker. But a big part of that is that a lot of powerful memories tend to happen because of the emotions around them.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain really does a good job of recording memories when there's a heavy emotion. And it could be good or bad. It doesn't matter. It's just like, as long as it's emotionally stimulating, your brain then logs like a memory of some sort. It could be like, you're at a comedy club and you're laughing your butt off so hard you almost cried, versus someone in your family passed away and you're crying so hard you feel like you're going to die. Both of those, your brain goes, cool, memory loss. This is why you can remember, like, I remember when I was 15 years old, my girlfriend, like, the guy be like 50 years old. I remember when I was 15, my girlfriend broke up with me. How tragic it was, but I had no idea where to put my keys down 10 minutes ago. Because your keys are not emotionally charged. With that instance, when you had your heart broken, there's a lot of hormones going through your system at that age, a lot of emotions going through.
Mm-hmm.
So these same guys who are going through life kind of emotionally numb, it's just because you have no more space for them. Like, not that you have no space for new memories, we don't have new space for new emotions to work itself through the system to then create the memories, to then enjoy it, have a lot of positive or negative experiences, like riding the waves of life itself. And they just kind of flatline emotionally through life.
Is that why we see like a lot of like memory issues and things with men and women who have like PTSD and things? Like, they can remember a lot prior to that, but then afterwards it's like that, just more short-term memory or something. Is it because there's just that block that they just are too full and haven't been able to process?
Yeah, that could definitely be a big part of it. There's a good book,
Interesting.
The Body Keeps the Score, by
Yeah.
Dr. Vessel van der Kolk. Talks about that memory issues and whatnot. And yeah, it's like your brain essentially is still on standby, waiting for that moment to happen again, because you haven't fully
Wow.
processed it, you haven't digested it yet.
It makes a lot of sense to me because I think, therapy is definitely gaining the, I don't know, popularity, I guess, that it deserves, because we all need therapy to process our crap, or coaching, or some type of degree to just have a professional outside of our own brain help us work through our brain. And so I do really appreciate that that is becoming more mainstream, I guess, that it's not just for those who belong in, a psych center. It's for all of us because we all have psych issues.
Yeah.
But, I think you can definitely see generationally where that wasn't as open or as sought after. There's certainly older generations that are not able to process things where I think the younger generations are like, okay, I know I don't know how to process things. Let me go get help to help with that.
Yeah, yeah, and the big thing with the therapy thing is it's people a lot of I think more recent generations look at it as like, "Oh, kids these days are so weak and this and da, da, da." But if you really wind the clock back far enough, like, therapy was always around in some capacity. It's
Hmm.
just different forms. Like, a good example was, like a good example is, like, confession at church.
Hmm.
It's like, I gotta get this off my chest to somebody in a private setting that I know is not gonna judge me no matter what I say.
Right.
But then you go to your priest, your pastor, and say like, "Hey, I did something really messed up, and I just feel terrible about it." But even prior to that, we're very tribal creatures. We're very like hyper social, community oriented creatures. So caveman days, like they go out on the hunt, something crazy happens, they come back, they talk about it with their buddies, with their friends, their family, and they kind of get it off their chest, they decompress.
Hmm.
Nowadays, something crazy happens, and we just isolate. We just go to our phones. We try to numb out through
Yep.
social media or Netflix or pornography is a big one,
Hmm.
video games, whatever it may be. And like, we don't build the kind of relationships with the people around us. And like, even like families now are becoming so like since the 19, like I guess like 1940s, 90s, the idea of like a family living isolated by themselves in the household is actually very foreign to our species.
Hmm.
Not that I'm all for like advocating, like, oh, make sure you have like, all your family all in living in a shoebox. Not necessarily that, but having people in proximity to you that you can build those relationships with and trust over
Hmm.
a period of time signals to your brain that like, okay, like if something crazy happens, I know I have people I can talk to, the people that'll
Hmm.
be nearby while I process it. And now go to work, stress out, come home, stay by yourself, or like, drink or porn, weed, video games, whatever it may be. And then on top of that, a lot of the newer generation is being taught like either suppress your feelings or like you don't have anyone you can safe that you can talk to.
Hmm.
And therapy as a result is becoming, I think, much more popular. And coaching the same thing. It's become more popular as a means of trying to fill that gap that we lost generationally and teaching people how like your emotions are not going anywhere. Like they're
Hmm.
they're hardwired into your psychology. You cannot run away from them. You're not going anywhere. The best thing you could do is learn how to move through them. This is what we do with the men's groups, for example. A lot of guys do very well when they have, especially a group of men, like traditional therapy for a lot of guys tend to fall short for a number of reasons, but one of the bigger reasons is that the vast majority of psychologists and psychotherapists are women. And a lot of
Hmm.
men just have an innate natural feeling of, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's like a lot of men just don't feel comfortable letting their guard down to someone they feel like they're supposed to
Yeah.
impress.
Hmm.
And I imagine you might even experience that when you ask them, like, "Oh, tell me about your ED issues." And they go like, "Oh, it's
Right.
not that bad. I mean, like, I have big muscles. Look at me. I'm cool, right?" And
Right.
then you're just like, "I don't
It's so
care. Like, I'm not,
true.
I'm not here for that." Yes. Yeah.
You
And
don't
it's
have to
not
impress me. I'm not
intentional.
going home with you.
Yes, yes, and there's just a part of the male brain. It's like, but I
Mhm.
have to maintain status. I have to maintain my sense of place in the tribe, or else I'm going to lose status, I'm going to lose rank, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And when you can help guys, when you put guys in a situation where it's like, here are other men that are going through the same thing you're going through, and they're not going to judge you for it.
Hmm.
And finally your brain goes, "Oh my god, I could finally lower the shield. Holy crap."
Yeah.
Like, and then they just let out this like feelings they've been holding in for God knows how long. And they just feel like a brand new person. And what's even better about that is that they
Hmm.
get a lot of energy back in the process. We see this a lot with men
Yeah.
who are like over 40, 50, 60 years old, who, when they let go of the emotional tension around memories or feelings or shame or embarrassment, suddenly they just
Hmm.
wake up feeling better because their brain is not spending energy anymore trying to like hold that persona anymore.
Mm.
It's much more
Yeah.
authentic. You don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to like hold back these feelings you couldn't really explain for a long time. They just feel better.
Yeah.
And like it's energy, it's repurposed and put back into your system in a healthy way. It's like taking like the anchors off of a boat that wants to start sailing.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. It is funny. I have guys who won't want to open up to me at all. And so I literally have erection posters on my wall in my exam rooms because then they'll point at it and be like, can we talk about that? And then on the flip side, I have some guys who are like, I refuse to see a male provider because I don't want to admit to another man that I don't
Mm,
work right, but I'll talk to you about it.
yep.
And I don't know if there's some because they know I'm not interested, like I'm a safe person because they're not trying to pick me up at the bar or what, but some of them really only want to talk to me as a female. They don't want to admit to another man that they're having issues. And then I have the guys who don't want to admit anything to me and will only talk to guys about it. So I definitely think there's such a place for it. And I have had many men who, okay, I'll take a Viagra, but that's as far as I'm going, even though it's not working anymore. I'm definitely not doing those injections or whatever. And then a month or two later, they'll come in and be like, all right, well, I was talking to a couple of my buddies, and one has an implant, and one does the injections, and three of them are on Viagra and whatever. So I'm not alone. So yeah, let's go try that next step.
Yeah.
And so I can see what you're saying, that camaraderie between them and what they can get out of knowing they're not alone in this
Yeah.
is really important.
Yeah, normalizing a lot of things that are pretty much
Mhm.
normal in some capacity. Yeah, a lot of these guys, they have this. It's hard. Everyone's story is different, but there's usually a
Mhm.
recurring theme of like at some point in your life somewhere you came up a little bit short of what your expectations were in the bedroom or among your friends. But that was me growing up. I had plenty of stories of like, for the longest time, I was obsessed with the size of my junk. I'll be flat out honest with that. I was
Yeah.
just convinced like that's what matters. If it's not like this friggin' big, and like
Right.
I'm never. And I had plenty of girlfriends, like or like high school, college, who were just like, yeah, that was great. I'm like, are you sure though?
Mhm.
Are you sure you don't want like an elephant between like, your legs, like crazy like that?
Right.
And
No, we don't.
then realizing, learning later on, like, oh, it's not even close to like how that works. It's not even like that's the
Yeah.
anatomy is totally off from what I'm thinking it is. But where did I learn
Right.
that? Mostly
Right.
from like pornography at a very young age. And a lot of guys
Yeah.
have these experiences of
Absolutely.
either like they were super embarrassed with their girlfriend or their wife at the time, or something happened. They were stressed out and they couldn't get it up, or they couldn't hold it, or they came too quickly, or whatever it may be. And they just internalized, like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. I'm a bad person. I'm inadequate.
Mm.
The mark of a man is his ability to satisfy a woman. And not even realizing how much of that is all, so much more of it is more tied to like so many more like layers and layers and layers of different things, especially
Yeah.
for women, how much more emotional sex really is from a woman. And this is for
Yeah.
men too in a
Yeah.
certain capacity, but a lot of guys tend to just over focus on the physical and under appreciate and focus on the mental and psychological portion of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking to our guys that are listening right now,
Mhm.
what are I mean, we've talked about porn and some other addictions, feeling like you're not performing to the level and stuff. What are a few things that they could do maybe in the meantime of getting in with a coach, a therapist, someone else who they can really start to talk to? What can they start to think about on their way there?
Ask yourself, like, what is the worst thing that will happen if you open up about these topics? 'Cause I think there's
Mm,
a bit of catastrophizing that goes on, even if it's like I'll give you a personal example. Years ago, I had some kind of weird, it was like a growth somewhere in my genitalia, and I have a male primary care physician, and I remember like for like a day, I was like, do I want to go see him? And then I was thinking like, okay, like I've heard the statistics on like testicular cancer are like 99% mortality rate because guys literally don't get it checked out, but it's like
right.
100% fixable if they just address it early enough. I'm like, I'm not going to be that one of those guys. I just swallow your
Yeah.
pride, swallow your, and, I'm like, and at the same time thinking like, this is a doctor. He probably has seen like
Mhm.
1,000 penises like in his life. Like he doesn't fucking care
Yes.
anymore. So kind of taking my projection of like what's going to happen versus like okay, look it through a little bit. And same thing with
Mhm.
if they're looking to work with a therapist or a coach, something like that, asking yourself like what's the worst is going to happen. Somebody, you're going to open up to
Mhm.
somebody and they're going to tell you about, maybe you're going to feel a little bit emotional and embarrassed, but it's all in confidentiality. No one else
Mhm.
is going to know about it. And the downside of not addressing it is that whatever is going on in your life is just going to keep perpetuating, and it's not going to solve
Mhm.
itself. It's not going to go away. The upside is fix the issues, try to like address them, try to like have a better frame, better perspective in life, have better sex, better relationships, better understanding of things, because oftentimes it's just things we weren't taught growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's amazing. And I just encourage men to talk to your provider if you're having issues, get the referrals you need, seek out coaches. How can people work with you specifically?
Sure. You can find me. I have a website. It's adaptivemen.com. I have a podcast I run weekly on YouTube. It's also at Adaptive Men. Same thing for Instagram and Facebook. And just shoot me an email at info@adaptivemen.com. And I'd be happy to answer, even just to answer any questions. And it's not necessarily coaching 101, but just I have people that'll reach out to me for just general inquiries and questions about this or that. I've recently people talking to me about, men in their life who are dealing with, difficulties in relationships and going through a rough divorce, unable to open up emotionally. I've, men that have been dancing with some really dark thoughts and
Mm,
not sure where to go to try to like have it unpacked in a healthy way. And I'm happy to support them however I can.
yeah. I love that. I love that. We need to unpack what's causing the issues and rewire and reteach ourselves how to react so that we can have better sex and better relationships and better work and friendships and all of the things. So I really
Absolutely.
appreciate you being here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate this.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody, will put all of the contact information in the show notes as well. Have a great week and go have some fun between the sheets. Thank you for joining us and exploring sexual health topics here on Between the Sheets. New episodes are available every Wednesday. Please subscribe and rate our podcast so we can reach more listeners. And don't forget to tell your friends, partners, and anyone who will listen about Between the Sheets. Send any comments, questions, or stories to podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. It's all one word, podcastbetweenthesheets@gmail.com. Thanks for listening and go have some fun between the sheets.